My name is Caroline Borderies. I'm a shadow puppeteer. I've been doing shadow puppetry for about 20 years, mainly for school, theater, museum, and cultural center. Xieng Mieng is our fifth production for the Charles Wang Center.
One night, Xieng Mieng secretly let himself into the golden room. Caught the cat, put it in a bag, and rushed back to his room to hide it. The next morning, Xieng Mieng put 2 bowls in front of the cat. One golden bowl with fresh fish, and one simple white bowl with rice. Then he called the cat, "Time for breakfast!" The cat was hungry and ran toward the golden bowl.
Shadow theater is a very old form of storytelling, shared by many Asian countries: Indonesia, Burma, Thailand, Cambodia, China, India. It uses flat cut-out figures, puppets, held between a source of light and a screen. The puppet casts a shadow on the screen. Thus, the audience sitting on the other side of the screen look at the shadow of the puppet and not at the puppet itself. Thanks to travelers and merchants, this form of theater reached first the Ottoman Empire, then Europe by the 17th century. There is indeed a long and living tradition of shadow puppetry in Greece and Turkey. It was introduced in France at the end of 18th century by French missionaries who performed in Versailles. It was called Ombres chinoises, literally Chinese shadow. And it definitely influenced the art of drawing silhouette and making shadow portraits with scissors. That will become extremely popular at the end of 18th and beginning of 19th century in England and in France. By the end of 19th century, in the famous Cabaret du Chat Noir in Montmartre, in Paris, artists Henri Rivière and Carandache were creating and performing shows with no less than 20 assistants. They were using tall puppets cut out from metal sheet, and they were projecting background with a magic lantern. Georges Fragerolles and Éric Satie were designated regular pianists to accompany this production. This form of entertainment gradually disappeared in France when the cinematograph was invented. But there are still small companies and artists putting up show and creating puppets, and I'm honored to be one of them. Traditional Asian and Indian puppets are usually made out of animal hides. Camel, buffalo, deer, donkey. The hide is stretched and dried to the point of becoming translucent in some part. Paint is sometimes applied on these translucent parts to give color. We use thin black cardboard, an X-Acto knife and scissors to make our puppets. I would say that our style is closer to the art of silhouette. In a way, it is like drawing with light. The light defines the outline of the puppet, but also the inside of the silhouette each time you make a hole and let the light go through. To add color to our puppet, we cut out some inside part and add any material that let the light go through. Cellophane, parchment paper, different kind of thin textile like muslin, lace or pellon. We don't systematically add color to the puppets. The magic of shadow puppet resides partly in the fact that the audience has to use its imagination. By depicting only the silhouette and suggesting the character, the shadow puppet allows for one's imagination to work and for the spectator to be more of a participant in the making of the story. Asian puppets are held with rods made out of buffalo horns or bamboo sticks, and their limbs are articulated with metal joints. We use thin wooden rods to hold our puppets and thin skewers with metal hook to move the arms. The articulation of the arm is done with the joint made with a fastener, and a magnet is placed on the hand of the puppet. Sometimes we use more complex techniques with strings to articulate a puppet. Each show that we have created requires about 60 puppets. That's a lot of sticks and material behind the screen, and we need to have them very organized. This is how we carry them in boxes.
Oh,
All these little people sleep together in the same box, and then we carry the decor in another box. That's a lot of people to carry. We put part of the set very close to the screen, attached with magnet on the side of the frame of the screen. We sometimes have another part of set acting like a background for the puppets, hanging from a bar at a small distance of the screen. Usually these are trees or branches. That gives us more depth, and the blurriness adds a little mysterious effect to the set, as if the characters were walking into a forest. To add the third degree of depth to the set, we sometimes use projecting background, and I'm going to let Suzanne talk about that.
My name is Suzanne Borderies, and I'm an architectural and interior designer living in New York City. I've been helping my mother, Caroline, with shadow theater for many years. One of the ways that I helped with a lot of the shows was creating dynamic backgrounds for her using screen projectors and my own art printed on transparent paper, which essentially is in itself another type of shadow theater.
can you show me how you work with this?
Yes, absolutely. So these are actually hand-sketched architectural drawings that we printed on clear paper. And so what shows through is the actual sketch itself as a shadow on the screen if you look behind you. So the projector, as you can see, basically mirrors the image, and we spliced a bunch of these sketches that I'd done together, so as it moves, it creates a consistent landscape that's ever-changing. Working with an overhead projector was a quite ingenious idea that my mother came up with on how to create more dynamic landscapes and backgrounds within shadow theater, which essentially is mostly based off of characters. I think that we've developed it into a much more dynamic form of art using perspective and depth and atmospheric perception. A good example of this would be one of the shows that we did about the poet Rumi, and in this show there is a merchant who goes on a voyage with his parrot, and we have a whole sequence of the merchant traveling to all these places. This was one of the more complex landscapes I've ever done. It was a very long landscape that basically in the background of the stage, would unroll as my mother was moving the puppets in the front of the stage and create kind of this conveyor belt effect of an ongoing landscape to insinuate the passing of time and the passing of landscapes. I think the idea of puppets not being a stagnant object, but actually moving through time and space within a story is very interesting, and something that I think in the past has often gotten lost within puppetry artwork. So integrating that in a different way was a very interesting part of it for me.
We use an old Fresnel projector. It's an old projector with a lens that diffuses light with a soft edge. And we use color filters depending on the effect or atmosphere we want to create. Night, sunset, plus an extra lamp for the moon.
Tell me how you create the moon.
In the final scene of Xieng Mieng, we used the projector with the blue filter for the night, plus a torchlight for the moon, and a mini torchlight for the moon's reflection in the pond.
Xieng Mieng, look up into the sky and tell me, what do you see? I see one full moon, Xieng Mieng answered confidently. Now look down into the pond, said the monk, and what do you see?
Between the standing lamp, the overhead projector, the structure for the screen, the hanging set, and the 60 puppets, the space is scarce for 2 puppeteers behind the screen. We need to organize perfectly the puppet in order to be able to grab them flawlessly during the performance.
My name is Mirna Lekic, and I have collaborated with Caroline on 5 original productions. Some of these were inspired by music that tells a particular story. For example, The Sorcerer's Apprentice by Paul Dukas, or pieces by Claude Debussy, such as his ballet The Toy Box, or the piano prelude The Sunken Cathedral. Using the medium of shadow puppetry, our goal is to present these works in a new light, clarify the action depicted in the music, and thus make the work more accessible. And in these kinds of music-inspired productions, we rely solely on image and sound and do not feature any spoken text or dialogue. Other productions use folk or classic tales or a series of poems as the starting point. And in these cases, we aim to create a sonic world that transports our audience to a specific time and place. This is what guides our decisions as far as the musical selections that we feature. For Xieng Mieng, we chose some music that was either composed by an Asian composer in a style influenced by traditional music, or otherwise featured certain scales, intervals, or tone colors associated with East and Southeast Asia.
The following morning, all of the king's advisors gathered in the audience room.
also included the toy piano, as its sound is closer to that of a glockenspiel or xylophone rather than a piano, and therefore reminiscent of percussion instruments from Southeast Asia.
The merchants were furious at having lost their Mieng and left the palace.
We choose music that can highlight the action or a particular mood, serve as a special effect, provide continuity during transitions and set changes, and underline the emotional connection and response.
Xieng Mieng lived now in an area of the palace where all the servants lived. In his private quarters, the king kept his cat locked in a special, magnificent room. It was a very big cat. The king enjoyed playing with the cat and combing its fur. Of course, the cat never ate ordinary food. A special cook prepared the freshest pieces of fish for the cat, twice a day. Xieng Mieng loved the cat too. He thought it was not right to feed a cat so much and with such delicate food. He also thought the cat would be much happier if it was free to go in and out, rather than to be locked in the room, which looked like a gilded cage. He decided to steal the cat and to keep it for himself. Hello, I'm David McCorkle. I'm a former Broadway and off-Broadway actor, singer, dancer. About 10 years ago, I began to work with Caroline and Suzanne Borderies with their shadow puppet shows. I started off as the narrator when we were doing recorded soundtracks for the shows. Recently, we've begun to do live performances, which I really, really love. And that really allowed me to use my skills as an actor, while primarily still being a storyteller. Sometimes I'll play the voice of an old seer, or I'll play the voice of a king, or I'll play the voice of a young prince. I also really love that music is a big part of our shows. And as a musician, it reminds me of a musical comedy or opera, because you also have music cues. And so it really keeps you on your toes. I've really loved doing these shows, and for an actor, or once an actor, always an actor, you get to play so many roles. And I look forward to doing more shows, and especially the live shows, because that replicates what I love so much, is how things can be different each time when they're live.
We end our live presentation with a behind-the-scene tour, and often pair this presentation with puppet making workshop to keep the tradition alive. And who knows, we might succeed in the discovery of young artists and future puppeteer.